So I'm going to outline some of the work we've been doing recently and what is upcoming, starting with the genocide in Gaza. So this has been on the forefront of everyone's minds. We grieve and often are at a loss to find words as we show up at protests. We vigil every Monday morning at Mikey Sherrill's office. We have many other vigils, which I will talk about in a little bit. We have done intensive outreach to all of our members. Every time Congress is about to approve another weapon sale to Israel, and we have been, many of you have seen the action alerts that we have done and have gotten phone calls from us about making those advocacy calls. There is a current bill, H.R. 3565. How many people know about that? So it is the bill that is currently on the table to stop the weapon sale about to happen to Israel. We have an action alert about it, and we hope that you all take one home and make the call. Stephen Marlowe takes the lead in working with multiple other organizations on the Gaza issue. Many of these organizations are newer to us, such as the American Muslims for Palestine, the Council on the American Islamic Relations. So as we work on this issue, we are building with other organizations and building an even stronger voice. We are committed to this for as long as is needed. Second topic, okay. The detention center at Delaney Hall and ICE raids. We all know of the shockingly inhumane treatment of immigrants. We have been participating in ongoing daily vigils and protests at the Delaney Hall Detention Center in Newark. Do people know about the vigils or the detention center? We have, along with many other grassroots groups, every single day since March, one group or another has been out there with signs of protest and also support and supplies for the families who are coming to visit their detained loved ones. Give me a moment. So this is just beyond heartbreaking. In the summer, when they are forced to stand in line on the broiling hot pavement in Newark, we brought them umbrellas so that they could be shaded, water, food, toys for the children, and as winter approaches, we are figuring out how to deal with coats, because someone, correct me if I'm wrong, is Delaney Hall not allowing coats in the facility? Did I? Oh, they are now? Okay. So we are also looking for how we're going to help families get through the winter. This is a hands-on, here and now action that is such a painful and direct attack on some of the most vulnerable. And in our calendar that we send out weekly by email, we have all of the times listed. You can talk to Stephen or probably Mike Greeley in the back about where you show up. Just in time. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Anna. Okay, where was I?
The list.
Oh, right, the email, right. So talk to us if you want to join us at Delaney Hall and help hand out supplies or be with other, activists in protest. That would be wonderful. Third thing that we are working on, which is just, come center in the news, our work for nuclear abolition. This has been our through line since the founding of New Jersey Peace Action in 1957. And the national organization, this was our founding issue, is the elimination of nuclear weapons, the ending of nuclear testing. And many of you have seen in the news that the START Treaty, which is the last standing enforceable nuclear weapons treaty, is due to expire in February of 2026. And I look forward to Dr. von Hippel's remarks today, which I'm sure will include a lot of nitty-gritty details and information that we can all use as we do this advocacy work. Senator Markey from Massachusetts, along with Senator Paul Rand, wrote to the Trump administration just about a week and a half ago, urging them to respond positively to Putin's offer to continue adhering to the START treaty for another year, so into 2027. There's an action here that you all can take on Monday. Both Senator Booker and Senator Kim signed that letter urging the president to respond positively. So you can call them and thank them for signing that letter. Very important. And if the treaty is extended, this then gives us more time to push for a stronger treaty and to continue to do education about the threat of nuclear weapons, the status of this treaty, and so forth. So I'm hoping everyone will call on Monday. Let's see, let me just catch up to myself here. The fourth item is our Peace Site Network. This was something that we actually started in the 1980s as a response to all these military sites. We asked individuals, houses and businesses and houses of worship to become a peace site, meaning that they simply agreed with the general principles of peace action and of peace. And Terri Suess, our veteran activist and powerhouse, is reaching out to all of these peace sites. We have about 30 or 40 businesses or houses of worship to ask them to do some kind of program on peace, or peace-related. It can be a discussion, it can be a poetry reading, but a way to bring them in, right? We need to build our movement, right? Bring them in. So Terri is taking the lead on that, and couldn't be in better hands. The reverend from the church here is wanting to work with us on that issue and bring their congregation in a little bit stronger on peacemaking issues. So that's really good news. So that's Peace Sites. You can talk to Terri if you're interested. Coming back to nuclear abolition, we are working on a campaign, as you've been, I think, hearing about over the last few years, called Back from the Brink, meaning back from the nuclear brink. And that is a nationwide campaign to get local elected officials to endorse a campaign with 5 simple steps towards nuclear abolition. Things like taking nuclear weapons off of hair trigger alert and disallowing that the president be the sole decision maker on whether or not to launch a missile. So simple, there's 3 others. We have some pending meetings with some local mayors and county commissioners. We hope that some of you will join us at these meetings because we meet with people who we think are going to pretty easily endorse it. So they can be very uplifting meetings, and hope that some of you are interested. So that's Back from the Brink. I need to talk about back to ICE and First Amendment rights. We know these are under threat all over the country. National Guard is marching into cities. It is mind-boggling to try to keep up with everything. But right here at home at the South Orange Maplewood Vigil, someone was arrested a little over a year ago. Her name is Lisa Davis. The only black person at that vigil. She was arrested. She was holding a megaphone. She was found guilty. We showed up en masse at her court hearing because this is a First Amendment issue right here in our backyard that we can respond to. And to support her, it is on appeal, and we will keep you posted. Keep looking at our email for updates there. I think those are all of the big things, except I didn't even have time to talk about Venezuela, about these boats being like randomly blown up in the Caribbean. It is, we all know how horrible it is. And I hope that some of these steps that I have laid out give you all ways to plug in and help with things. have two, we do have ongoing peace vigils. Judith and Helga, many of you here go to if you go to the Montclair Peace Vigil every Friday from 5 to 6, raise your hand. Oh, fantastic. Great. Lori Thomas is at the Morristown Vigil every Friday, I think from 6 to 7. She's right there. If you're anywhere near Morristown, come support her. She's handing out cards. I have my last announcement is Paul Schneider just told me that there is a webinar tomorrow featuring a report from the West Bank from a Palestinian there. Do I have that right?
It'll be on Zoom. It'll be on Zoom. I think it's at 12:30 tomorrow. So
okay. Yeah, 12:30 tomorrow. If you want help getting the link, you can talk to Paul. Paul, raise your hand. Anything else urgent that I forgot? Oh, except, yeah, I think I'll end there. I was going to talk about our planned giving campaign, but we will just hand you brochures. On that note, I am going to call up Terri Suess, who I referenced earlier, and she's going to talk about other ways that you can support our work and our organization.
Good afternoon, everybody. Beautiful fall afternoon. I think we should have one big round of applause for Virginia and the report she just gave. Yeah. And also for the board of New Jersey Peace Action. Right now, we should applaud them. They put on a beautiful event for us today. And that is not an easy thing to do in this time. So I would like to make sure we thank them repeatedly. However, my name is Terri Suess. You know, I'm a longtime member of New Jersey Peace Action. I was, different years, I was on the board. And so I know this organization well, and it means a lot to me. And as I really want to start with the words, we the people, because these are the words that are under attack right now. And if we take one moment and look around this room and look at each other, we'll see we're not a huge group this year, but we are a mighty group. The people in here, every one of us, are doing actions that are critical in this time and place. And for that, I commend each and every one of you, and I thank you. I would like to put out a challenge before we get to the raising money part, that we each take a challenge for the spring to bring 10 new people with us. That's a big challenge. That's a big challenge. It means I have to talk to my neighbors, you know, and I have to reach out to some younger people. But we can do this. I think that is one of the best ways that we're going to raise the energy of our own work. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is that we need to raise funds. New Jersey Peace Action, as you know, is this incredible organization. Where else do we have a group that we can come to, that we can know is working on Gaza? We wake up every morning to horrible news, but we know some actions are being taken, and we can plug in to those actions. That's incredible. That is not to be taken lightly. Same with Delaney Hall. I mean, I was active down there early on. Now, I didn't go this morning. There are so many people there. So these things grow little by little and person by person, and they are powerful. So what about nuclear abolition? I mean, we don't even want to think about it. It's so frightening. I can remember in the 80s when I actually believed I could do anything I wanted with my life because it could end at any moment. And actually, that was a little liberating for me. But it's a horrible thing. And now Mary's telling me of a new movie. We all live in a house of dynamite. We're going to hear more of that. That's terrifying. And that's why we're so lucky to have Mr. Von Hippel here to speak today. However, we have an organization that has worked on this for years. And it's the only reason we haven't blown ourselves up. This is the work of people, not just us who are in this room. We can look back at legions of people who have been members of New Jersey Peace Action, who have been awarded, who have been doing actions. I mean, many of my friends who've passed away were critical to this organization. So we take up that mantle. And we need to make this organization as good as it can be. And let's face it, we are a membership organization. We raise our money from ourselves. And that's a big lift. That's a big lift. But it's not impossible. The goal from now until the end of the year for New Jersey Peace Action to be able to continue with all that they're doing is to raise $25,000. That sounds like a lot, but you know, if each of us could dig deep, you know, and give several $100s. One person has already started that campaign with $250 check. That's nice. That's tremendous. And we appreciate that. Many of us, you know, we're doing okay. We're retired, but we have little income. We have savings. We have put our older years in order, and we need to part with some of those funds. I'm sorry, and I'm talking to myself as much as you, and it is hard. You think, oh, well, what happens if, you know, but heck with what happens if. You know, what happens if we don't support this organization? That would be the disaster. That would be the real disaster. So I'm asking you, not just, you know, $50. I mean, younger people, they're working. I don't know where they're at. But I'm really asking you today to try and write those checks and put a few zeros after those numbers. Try to do that. The other thing we have with New Jersey Peace Action that's just wonderful is the Sustainer program. And if we are sustainer, I'm a sustainer. My partner's a sustainer. My neighbor's a sustainer. No, I don't know, but we need more sustainers. And what that means is you commit to a certain amount every month. Maybe it's or quarter, but I'd like to do it monthly, well, or quarterly, and that would be like $10 per month. That would be $120 a year. That's good. What about $20 per month? That's even better. Or $25. And that's wonderful. So if writing a check seems like to be too much, you can go the sustainer route. Plus, 4 board members have said, if we generate new sustainers, if you become a new sustainer today, they will contribute $10 each for every new sustainer we get. Or, that's great. Commend the board for that. Thank you. Good idea. The other thing is, if you are already a sustainer, as I am, if I raise that $5 a month, not a big lift, they'll put in a $10 for me. Right? Am I right on that? Okay. So, if you're a sustainer, try to increase it a little bit. $5, right? That's nothing in today's money, right? And it means a lot to New Jersey Peace Action. So, I think that covers it. We are going to have a little moment where you can write checks. There are envelopes on the table. People will be coming around and accept your donations. And also, I think on there is a place to sign up for the sustainership. Is that right, on the form? So you'll be fine for that. Are there any questions or any additional ideas or ideas for strengthening our financial commitment?
So just remind people about the cost of doing a single mailing.
Oh, yeah. Virginia reminds me that, you know, if we have to mail every year to people, it's very expensive now. It's the postage, it's the preparation, the time, all of that. So if you're a sustainer, this just goes on. This goes along and continues, and it's much less time consuming for the organization, and we can continue doing these activities and working on the legislative meetings and working on the vigils and being out in the community. And let's all try to commit to some tabling this winter so that we can actually find more members. We're going to find, each of us is going to find at least one additional person. I'd like to see the 10. But even one will bring us further along and help us, you know, be a stronger organization. But my ending thought is to each of you to please look around and see how beautiful you are. You are really the community of New Jersey, and I commend you. Hooray!
I just wanted to add something. I realized when I was talking about peace vigils that I left out 3 peace vigils. I talked about Montclair and Morristown. There's a peace vigil every Wednesday in Teaneck from 4 to 5. Jan Berry is one of the attendees. In Leonia on Sundays from 4 o'clock to 4:30, and in South Orange Maplewood in the morning 12 to 1 on Sunday. So I realized I did not mention those peace vigils. They are near and dear to us.
Thank you.
Into the mainstream, it gets into the headlines. As we get into next year, particularly when the START 2 treaty is going to be talking about getting renewed. I know President Trump and Putin were supposed to be having a summit. There's still talk about that, with that becoming one of the topics of conversation that they have when they meet. Hopefully it will be, and they can talk about extending or discussing that treaty and extending it and not making it end. So I just think that it sort of was just so timely that with the nuclear disarmament issue coming back into the headlines in the mainstream, that we have Professor von Hippel here today. So we're very pleased that he could be here today, and we want to present him with the New Jersey Peace Action Bread and Roses Award. He's being presented the Hope Shapiro Bread and Roses Award for his leadership and lifelong commitment to working towards global nuclear disarmament. So that's, we're very honored for you to be here today.
Could you do that over here?
I've been a member of your counterpart in South New Jersey, the Coalition for Peace Action, for more than 40 years. I think a number of us date back to the freeze period, and in fact, some of you may recognize this procession down 42nd Street in New York City.
Is that 1982?
June 12th, 1982. You were there? Yeah. The million-person march when we went to Central Park. And that got attention in Washington and also in Moscow. In Washington, President Reagan, who'd been focused on building up our nuclear weapons, didn't stop with that agenda, but he tried to change the subject to ballistic missile defense. And in fact, we have the Golden Dome being proposed now, which is very much like the Star Wars program that President Reagan was advocating. But in Moscow, Gorbachev wasn't in power yet, but he was thinking about nuclear disarmament, and he concluded, well, maybe the U.S. was not completely controlled by the military-industrial complex, and so maybe there was a possible alliance with the U.S. Anti-nuclear movement that could propel things forward. Well, the graph here shows the buildup that was underway at the time, that the Reagan administration proposed and pretty much carried out to deploy about 10,000 accurate ballistic missile warheads and cruise missile warheads for fighting and winning a nuclear war, because they thought, well, they thought that the Soviets were intending, thought that they could fight and win a nuclear war, and so we had to develop the same posture. Now, Gorbachev came into what happened in Moscow was that they had 3 successive general secretaries who died early in their 1970s, approximately a year apart. And they thought, well, maybe we should try somebody younger who will last longer. And so they chose Gorbachev. And Gorbachev had a number of agendas, internal reform, but including internal reform, democratization. But nuclear disarmament was one of his agendas. And he started on August 6, 1985, with a unilateral test moratorium. Now, the Reagan administration was not at all interested in that. They had these new warheads to develop, and also Edward Teller, the self-styled father of the U.S. H-bomb, had a new idea about an X-ray laser that could be launched into space to shoot down incoming Soviet warheads. So they wanted to work on that as well. And they also knew, we didn't have a comprehensive test ban treaty. We did have a partial test ban treaty, which banned testing. It dated back. It was a Kennedy-Khrushchev test ban treaty, a partial test ban treaty from 1963. And it banned nuclear testing everywhere except underground. And the reason it didn't include underground was really the Soviet paranoia. Well, we had paranoia on both sides. We were concerned about possible cheating, and they were concerned about U.S. spying if we sent inspectors into the Soviet Union to check up on seismic signals, whether they were really natural earthquakes or chemical, quarry explosions, or whether they were underground nuclear tests. Basically that was the situation. And then since 1983, at the time I was the chairman of the Federation of American Scientists, and since 1983 we had been talking with a group of Soviet scientists, members of the Soviet Academy of Science, who called themselves the Committee for Peace and Against the Nuclear Threat. I mean, they never really got the short titles. And the chairman of this group was Evgeny Velikov, who died about 6 months ago. And it turned out that we were brainstorming with his group, but he was brainstorming with Gorbachev about what they could do. And that, and we learned about the Gorbachev connection after Gorbachev became General Secretary. And Velikov, it was very easy for Velikov to talk to Western scientists because he was the head of the Soviet fusion program, and that was one of the few programs, because the application was so far in the future, where it was easy, and there was a lot of international collaboration going on, not competitive programs. And he actually visited the U.S. quite a few times. And in fact, first time I met him at Sheremetyevo Airport in Moscow, he was wearing a Princeton tie because the Princeton runs the U.S. main fusion, government fusion laboratory, and so he visited Princeton. So anyway, Gorbachev, one of Gorbachev's policies was glasnost, openness, as a way to create a more democratic environment in the Soviet Union. And Velikov's idea was, why not extend that to the nuclear disarmament area, which is where they had got hung up on the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. So, I guess 40 years ago, I met Gorbachev in Copenhagen, and he told me, met Velikov, and he told me he had an idea. How about if we invited either an international group or a U.S. group to come to the Soviet Union and check out that they really were not testing. And so in May 1986, I brought 3 groups who were interested in doing this to a meeting in Moscow. Turned out only one of those groups was ready to actually recruit some seismologists to set up around the Soviet test site. And that was actually, interestingly enough, an environmental group which had a nuclear group embedded with it, which had been focused on nuclear energy, but also had an interest in the nuclear weapons issues. And that was led by a young physicist by the name of Tom Cochran. So in July, Velikov didn't know how long the window of opportunity would last. So he said, get there as fast as possible. And then finally, Gorbachev actually, it was in July that Gorbachev actually took it up with the Politburo. And the Politburo, the leadership of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, Soviet Communist Party, had conservatives as well as a few liberals. And the conservatives really were against this unilateral openness. And so at the end of the meeting, was Gorbachev and Velikov were left. And Gorbachev said, well, maybe we really can't do this. And Velikov later told me that he told Gorbachev, sorry, boss, they're already there. And so they were. And just to orient you, the Soviet Union had 2 test sites, nuclear test sites. One down there, you see the red dot down toward the bottom of the picture, in Kazakhstan, Semipalatinsk. And one up for really big tests up in the Arctic, like we tested out in the Pacific. And it was easy to monitor the Arctic test site because Norway had some very good seismic setups in cooperation with the U.S. In Norway and also in the Norwegian islands north of the Soviet Union. But it was pretty hard to get close to the Semipalatinsk test site. So here's a picture on the left of a group of academic seismologists from the U.S. with their portable seismometers at that point, setting up on about 100 miles from the Kazakhstan test site, and later on they tested the sensitivity of these seismometers with an explosion of 10 tons of chemical explosive at the test site. And here's Tom Cochrane on the left, on the right side, and with Velikov, sort of going around. I think at the time of that test explosion, and that had a big impact. The Congress had sort of given up on pushing for a comprehensive test ban because of this impasse over seismic monitoring in the Soviet Union. And now all of a sudden, they were not only unilaterally stopped the testing, but they were unilaterally opening up. And in fact, allowing this group to set up a permanent station, or as long as they wanted to be there. And that reignited congressional interest. And this is a picture of Edward Markey, at that time a representative, now a senator, holding up the first seismogram from this effort. And the House got very excited, and in fact voted almost immediately to join the Soviet moratorium. The Senate didn't go along, so it took a while. But the Senate finally did move 6 years later, and barred and said U.S. testing has to stop. And they said you can do 15 more tests if there are really urgent safety or reliability issues that you have to deal with. And I went into the White House at that time, and we concluded that we had a debate and concluded that the Secretary of Energy concluded that we didn't have to do those 15 tests. So the negotiations began in Geneva, and in fact, in September 1996, we had a treaty, and the signing began. Now the Senate has not ratified that treaty, and some other key countries. There's a list of 40 countries that have to ratify, and a number of them haven't. But only since 1998, only one country has tested, North Korea, and they haven't tested since 2017. So we have a de facto test ban treaty, even if it's not legally enforced. And one of the things we have to watch out for is to defend that. During the first Trump administration, there was interest in testing, resuming testing. You know, there's nothing that they don't want to tear down. And so far, they have not raised. They're tearing down a lot of things, but so far they have not. The Trump administration has not raised the idea of resuming U.S. resuming testing. But we have to be alert to that and be ready to mobilize on that issue if need be. Now, this was not the only thing that nuclear glasnost, nuclear openness, Velikov organized, and I just wanted to show you briefly three other things that he did. This is as part of it all happened in July 1989, so it was 3 years later. And on the left, Velikov arranged that we would go and visit Russia's first plutonium production city. We were the first foreigners to ever visit that city. In fact, the city was not even on the maps, the Soviet maps. It was just had a post box number in a nearby city. And on the left, you see Velikov, and we had 3 U.S. representatives along, and the people are sort of gawking at them, the first Americans that they had seen. On the right, we did visit their first plutonium production reactor and saw that it had been shut down. At that time, one of the things we were pushing in Congress was a so-called plutonium cutoff initiative, that the U.S. should shut down its plutonium reactors, and they showed us that they were starting to shut theirs down. So the second stop was the U.S. Defense Department was saying that the Soviet Union had a Star Wars program. Gorbachev said that they would not do that. They thought it would be cheaper to neutralize our ballistic missile defense program than to make their own. But the Defense Department at that time had a annual report that they put out, a glossy report that they put out called Soviet Military Power. And this is a picture from one of them on the top there, where they were showing a laser coming up from Kazakhstan, the Soviet anti-missile test site in Kazakhstan. And they said that it could be used as an anti-satellite role today and possibly in a ballistic missile defense role in the future. So Velikov invited us to visit this laser. And we went inside it, and we saw the lasers actually inside. And the highest power laser was 20 kilowatts, which is like an industrial cutting laser, a metal cutting laser. And so we came back and gave a briefing to the U.S. Defense Department experts, who were at that time trying a 1,000,000-watt laser. And one of them blurted out and he said, "Toys." And so we sort of deflated that particular, that bit of glasnost allowed us to deflate the idea that the Soviets had a Star Wars program of their own and that we had to compete. The last one I'd like to show you is really quite remarkable. The Soviet, we were at that time negotiating, the U.S. and the Soviet Union were negotiating the START I treaty. And the Soviets wanted to include on that nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missiles. And the U.S. said, negotiators said, you can't do that because how can you tell a nuclear-armed cruise missile from a conventional cruise missile? And so Gorbachev ordered up a cruise missile for us to experiment with. And on the flagship of the Soviet Black Sea Fleet, which was later actually in 2022 sunk by the Ukrainians. And it had in one of the, you can see on the right there the launchers for the cruise missiles, and on On one of them, in one of them, they put a nuclear-armed cruise missile. This was over, later on, I learned that this was over the objections of the Soviet counterpart of Oppenheimer, who still was in charge of their counterpart to Los Alamos. And there's a picture of him there with their copy of the Nagasaki bomb, which is the first bomb that they tested. They were afraid of if in fact their test failed. They had their own design, but they were afraid if their test failed, they'd all be executed. And so they just said, let's just test the U.S. bomb. We know that one works. So here you see on the bottom left, actually it's a Soviet group, but we did it also, measuring the gamma rays coming out of the launcher there. And that's what Cariton objected to, because he said we could figure out the design of the warhead by looking at the gamma rays, and which was true, turned out to be true. But Gorbachev didn't care, and I don't think it made a difference. But then more interesting to me was they then demonstrated that they could detect the neutrons coming out of the warhead from a helicopter. And later on, when we talked with them, they said, yeah, we've flown this helicopter over U.S. ships, and we think we can even measure the number of warheads on U.S. ships. And I said, well, they would never let you that close. And then they showed me pictures of U.S. sailors waving at them. So that was real. So it turned out that the U.S. still refused to include the nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missiles in START 1. But, and so there was a gentleman's agreement that both sides would not have more than, I forget the number, at sea. Well, START 1 and then follow-on treaties resulted in the great decrease in the U.S. and Soviet arsenals, from a peak of over 60,000 to about 10,000 today. You see, we still dominate, the two countries, U.S. and Russia now, still dominate the number of, everybody else is in this, the other 7 countries are in this, at the bottom there, that little bar in the bottom. But the reductions have ended, and in fact, there's a concern, there's pressure to increase U.S. deployment because China is building up, and people are saying, well, what if China and Russia wanted to attack us at the same time? We have to have an equal number as the two of them combined, which is a formula for a nuclear arms race. So we're beginning. There is a slow increase. We've got we really got to, and I think what was mentioned that Putin offered to continue at the current limit for another year after the New START treaty that was negotiated under Obama. Those limits is good news, and Trump said, responded positively, but they had to do something. It wouldn't be a treaty. It would be, I think, an executive agreement. And so that's something that they could just do, at any time, and we should press them to do that, and then to use the year, either to continue that limit or to get on with nuclear arms control, which now I think does have to include China as well as Russia. So the question is, how much further down could we go? At the moment, we have about 4,000 warheads, about 2,000 of which are deployed on missiles or for bombers at a few strategic command air bases. Under Obama, the Joint Chiefs said 1,000 would be enough. But Obama didn't want to do that unilaterally, and Putin at that point was not interested in going down. Probably still not interested. And there are, as I mentioned already, that there are there's talk in both the Pentagon and in Congress, the Armed Services Committees, that we have to increase because China is building up now. For decades, China was satisfied with having 200 warheads, while we had more than 10,000. But now they're no longer under Xi Jinping. They are no longer satisfied. They want to be in the big leagues, and that creates problems that we have to deal with. Also, under George Bush Sr., when the Soviet Union was falling apart, part of the reductions that I showed were due to they agreed to basically about half of our nuclear weapons we had 20,000 nuclear weapons at the end of the Cold War. About half of them were these strategic weapons for attacking the Soviet Union, and half of them were so-called battlefield nuclear weapons, including nuclear shells that could be shot out of artillery, short-range missiles, bombs for fighter bombers, and so on. Well, when the Soviet Union started falling apart, George Bush Sr. Said, we're in danger of having 15 nuclear-armed states, resulting from the breakup of the Soviet Union. And the ones which were most distributed were these so-called battlefield nuclear weapons. And he said, well, we're going to unilaterally, this is a time when we did something unilateral, we're going to unilaterally withdraw to central storage and eliminate most of our battlefield nuclear weapons. And Gorbachev said, that sounds like a good idea to me, and did the same thing. So that's I think that steep drop here, the steep drop there was that initiative. Well, now Congress has forced on the Biden administration actually a proposal from the first Trump administration to deploy sea-launched nuclear-armed cruise missiles again on attack submarines. And I think the scenario is if we have a battle over Taiwan, to be able to threaten to go nuclear if things aren't going our way. So that's something we've got to watch out for and oppose. So now here's another way of seeing the current stockpiles. And you can see that the U.S. and Russia dwarf the other countries. China's coming up. And why do we need so many more nuclear weapons than the other countries? It's because most of them are aimed at each other. They're for nuclear war fighting. they're actually, the fear is that they're for preemptive strikes. And that's why our ICBMs, which are missile silos, yeah, I'll show that, are on a launch on warning posture. But we have this mantra, the Reagan-Gorbachev mantra, which all five of the first five nuclear armed states, so U.S., Russia, UK, France, and China, have endorsed this mantra. A nuclear war cannot be won and must not be fought. So why are our forces still designed for fighting, for first use, basically, of nuclear weapons? And here, the part of our we have a nuclear triad. That is, we have warheads on intercontinental ballistic missiles, in silos in the northern Great Plains, and as the U.S. and Soviet and now Russian missiles have become more accurate, these missiles in silos, even though the silos are very hard and can withstand pressures of 2,000 pounds per square inch, blast over pressures, they become vulnerable. And so that in the late 1970s, so the U.S. put its silo-based ICBMs in a launch-on-warning posture, and therefore put the missiles on its submarines in a launch-on-warning posture, so that it was it's called use it or lose it, and the House of Dynamite sort of reflects that which I recommend. I mean, it's a little confusing to somebody who isn't familiar with this posture and launch on warning posture, where the president is being pressed to launch against the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea, when one missile is coming in aimed at Chicago. I mean, it's a different kind of, it's a sort of exaggerated version of launch on warning. So I think I'm advocating no first use, that we adopt a no first use posture as our next step, which would eliminate the justification for these for these warfighting missiles. So, I mean, and it's certainly consistent. It seems to me that it follows from the mantra that a nuclear war cannot be won and must not be fought. There's two arguments against this, being made against this. One is deterrence, and the Pentagon, Republicans, and some Democrats argue, especially in the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, argue we shouldn't take any option off the table that will undermine deterrence. And then there's extended deterrence, which is that we have, partly for non-proliferation reasons, we've told 32 countries, the non-nuclear armed states in NATO, plus Japan, South Korea, and Australia, we've told them, you don't need your own nuclear weapons. You're our allies, and if need be, you're aggressed against, including conventionally. Our nuclear weapons are available to you, and this is the so-called nuclear umbrella. I mean, we would use them, but we would use them in defense of them. And so that would be first use, potentially first use in a conventional war. And in fact, that would be true if we got into a fight with the Chinese over Taiwan. A Chinese colleague and I have been advocating that the U.S. and China have at least a no first use agreement about if we get into a fight over Taiwan. So contrast our posture with these about 2,000 warheads, most of them on launch on warning posture, with the UK and French nuclear postures. They have each had 4 submarines, ballistic missile submarines with 16 missiles in them. And one of those is hidden at sea at any one time. If there's a crisis, they have 2 other armed submarines in port ready to go to sea. And in fact, the French, for the first time, did send their 2 other submarines to sea during the when Putin was making threats with nuclear threats in connection with the Ukraine invasion. But there's no pressure on them to launch on warning, and the instructions, as far as we know, to them is, in fact, in the case, the British case, the first thing a prime minister does is write out handwritten instructions, which are then put in the safe in these submarines. What to do if London is destroyed by a nuclear weapon. And so these are, so de facto, even though they're maintaining solidarity with the U.S. on being opposed to no first use, the British and the French have no first use postures. And I'm arguing that we should actually get rid of our ICBMs, intercontinental ballistic missiles, and just depend primarily on our submarines for deterrence against somebody else's first nuclear strike. That's the next step. Of course, we want to get rid of them, but that's further down the road. Now, this, just to show you what the world situation is, I've color-coded the countries of the world. The ones in green are nuclear weapons-free zones. They've declared that there's a Latin American free nuclear weapon-free zone. There's an African nuclear weapons-free zone. There's this South Pacific nuclear weapons-free zone. And then in red, we have the nuclear weapon states. And then the yellow are countries under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. So actually, Australia should be both green and yellow because it is a part of the South Pacific nuclear weapons-free zone, but it is also under the U.S. nuclear umbrella. So you see, it's an interesting situation. The South has sort of declared the South Hemisphere has declared itself nuclear weapons-free, and all the troublemakers are in the Northern Hemisphere. I also want to mention, I mean, I think we're all familiar with the Cuban Missile Crisis, but I also want to mention another crisis that happened the year before. In fact, the Cuban Missile Crisis was in a way a follow-on on the 1961 Berlin crisis. the source of the crisis was that people were leaving East Germany through Berlin. Berlin was open. There was an East German sector, and then there was a West German sector. And the West German sector was under the control of the U.S., UK, and France, and the East German sector was under control of the Soviet Union and East Germany. Well, this leakage of people, you would sort of look like the last person out of East Germany, please turn off the lights. And so the East Germans really were putting a lot of pressure on the Soviet Union we've got to stop this. And so Khrushchev and Kennedy famously had a meeting in 1961, after which Kennedy said it's going to be a cold winter. And what Khrushchev told Kennedy was that he planned to give East Germany control over its borders, including in Berlin. And so the Kennedy administration expected expected the East Germans to shut down access to West Berlin, as they had happened in 1948. You remember, or you've heard of the airlift that kept West Berlin going, including coal. They were flying into West Berlin until that cutoff ended. And then, so the U.S., so McNamara said, well, we'll send 2 divisions in to open the road to West Berlin. But the only problem was that he expected that the East Germans' army would vastly outnumber those 2 divisions, and that they would be backed up by the 22 Soviet divisions. And so each side saw an escalation, and at the end was nuclear weapons. And where the Soviets actually planned to preempt the U.S. by attacking the U.S. nuclear weapons first. At the last minute, East Germany built the Berlin Wall. The nuclear deterrence was so seductive that they only thought of that as an alternative. It certainly wasn't a good thing for the East Germans, but it did prevent a nuclear war. Now, the reason I mention this is I think Taiwan could be our generation's West Berlin, and so I mentioned at least we could have there should be a better out than to fight with China about Taiwan, but at least we could have a no first use agreement, so we don't have to destroy the world. So I would argue that I mentioned that France and the UK have about 1/10 the number of nuclear weapons as we do, and that we could go down to that level and still have a deterrent as a next step. I mean, we want to get to 0. And why would we need more if we believe in a no first use posture? Now, my view is only one part of the spectrum, and I just wanted to make clear that the problem is not just the Trump administration. The problem is the Pentagon and the hawks in Congress, and we have to work on. I mean, that's part of our responsibility to work on Congress, as we have, as we did during the freeze, and we have done at a lower level since then. So this is just a quoting. These are Biden administration, former Biden administration officials who are now running the Center for International Security at MIT. And they say, even in their recent article in Foreign Affairs, they say even if the United States completes the modernization, the $1 trillion modernization as planned, the country's arsenal will still be insufficient to manage the multiplying threats from China, North Korea, and Russia. More forces are required to first eliminate as many adversary forces as practical. This is the preemption. If an adversary miscalculates or threatens escalation in a war, so even before they use nuclear weapons. And the United States needs more different and better nuclear systems to destroy the ICBM silos that China is now developing while targeting an unchanged number of Russian delivery systems. So that's the Biden administration. So we do have a bipartisan problem, and we have to educate these folks again. The people we educated 40 years ago have all gone except for Markey, as far as I can tell. So ultimately, as far as all I'll say about it is going to zero, which is the ultimate objective, and is the objective of the group of 77 countries that have ratified the Treaty for the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. To verify that, we will need an open world to get to zero, because we'll need to be able to go anywhere, anytime, as Gorbachev would have and Belikov would have understood. In the meantime, we have to preserve our political rights to agitate for more sane policies. So, thank you. So that's it.
Thank you.